Robin Hood Radio and the Robin Hood Radio Network is proud to present Leonard Lopate at Large, lively hour-long in-depth discussions providing overviews and context to topics usually covered in partial measures. His guests include leading thinkers, scientists, artists, economists, farmers, historians, authors, and politicians. Mr. Lopate is a Peabody Award winner whose numerous honors include 3 Associated Press Awards and 3 James Beard Awards.
Welcome to Leonard Lopate at Large. I'm Leonard Lopate. In towns across America, people who used to look forward to the beginning of spring now dread how the warm weather brings streams of illegally loud motorcycles screaming through their streets. Excessive motorcycle noise is no mere nuisance. An abundance of scientific research reveals noise can be harmful to our health and our communities. The U.S. has no shortage of federal, state, and local laws to protect citizens from excessive motorcycle noise. So why do we continue to be assaulted by their ear-piercing decibels? Joining me now to discuss this matter is Dr. Ted Rueter, a director of Noise Free America, a national citizens group opposed to noise pollution. He's taught at major universities throughout the United States, has worked for elected officials, and is the author of 12 books. Welcome to our show.
Well, thanks for having me, Leonard. It's great to be with you.
At a Board of Trustees meeting in Woodstock, Vermont this past July, when citizens voiced their frustration over the excessive motorcycle noise that they have to contend with, the chairman of the board shrugged it off and said, "Harleys are just loud." Are motorcycles manufactured to be loud?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That is a very common myth that many people, probably most people, believe. Motorcycles, when they come off the factory assembly line, are quiet because they are required to be by EPA regulations. And the core of the problem with very loud motorcycles is the fact that individual owners purchase illegal aftermarket equipment, and many of them do it immediately upon purchasing their motorcycle.
But aren't motorcycles covered by the Noise Control Act of 1972?
Absolutely, absolutely. But unfortunately, there's very lax enforcement or non-enforcement by the EPA, by state governments, and by local governments. And unfortunately, in 1981, the Federal Office of Noise Abatement and Control was defunded by the Reagan administration. And so now within the EPA, there's really only one person who deals with noise pollution at all, and she basically just answers phone calls and emails. And so, really, the EPA has washed its hands of the issue since 1981.
That means through both Republican and Democratic administrations.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wish that we would have, Noise Free America, we would have been more active during the Clinton-Gore administration, because you would think that Al Gore, Vice President Gore, would have been receptive to our message. But no, to my knowledge, there's never been, an administration that has been interested in resuming the federal role in noise control regulation.
The noisefree.org website states that the Noise Control Act requires motorcycles to be equipped with EPA-approved mufflers, not just when they leave the factory, but at all times while they're on public roads in the United States. And
Absolutely.
that it's a violation of federal law to tamper with the emission control devices of motorcycles. If that's
Exactly.
the case, so then how do we wind up with all these loud motorcycles?
Well, I want to add too that it's a violation of every state motor vehicle regulation as well. Every state, has a regulation saying that it's illegal to modify or alter or remove the exhaust on cars and motorcycles, motor vehicles, for the purpose of making noise. And so to answer your question about how we happen to be stuck in this situation, well, number one, the defunding of the Federal Noise Pollution Control Office by the Reagan administration was very consequential. And also the fact that the motorcycle lobby is very powerful. And there are a lot of, police officers who love motorcycles, and there are a lot of members of Congress who love motorcycles, and they, view any restrictions on their right to make noise as, unfair.
If you visit the official Harley-Davidson online store, you'll find that the tagline for the exhaust section is "Upgrade your growl and find your signature rumble in HD exhaust systems." So is Harley-Davidson profiting from excessive motorcycle noise?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. On the one hand, they officially state that we're very concerned about noise pollution, and we want our motorcycle riders to be responsible and not to inflict excessive noise. But on the other hand, as you point out, their advertising, their marketing encourages their purchasers, their customers, to make lots of noise. And also, what happens too, Harley could really have a significant impact on the whole problem if they simply ordered all of their dealers and shops that sell their equipment to not sell illegal aftermarket equipment. They could shut this down, very quickly if they decided to.
But many of the aftermarket mufflers sold on the official Harley-Davidson online store are described as slip-on. Does that mean that they're easy to install?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Vance and Hines is one of the major manufacturers of aftermarket equipment, and they admit that their product is illegal for use on streets and highways. It's for off-course use only.
What is off-course?
That means simply going to a racetrack. Mm-hmm. And so all this equipment, the way that they get away with selling it is that they put these stickers on for off-course use only, and of course it's a wink and a wink and a nod and a nod. Everyone knows that the purchasers are going to use it on the streets and the highways.
In its product descriptions, Harley-Davidson describes its mufflers as aggressive. Is aggressive synonymous with loud?
Absolutely, absolutely. And many motorcyclists, they try to create their own distinctive sound, and they call their distinctive sound a music note. And there are lots of websites and bulletin boards where motorcyclists get together and they compare notes on their type of sound, on their type of noise, and how they can make it louder.
Harley-Davidson has given these aftermarket mufflers names like Screamin' Eagle and right. Street Cannon.
Right. Exactly.
So, obviously, they don't meet the EPA requirements spelled out in the Noise Control Act.
And in December, I happened to be in Milwaukee, and I took a tour of the Harley-Davidson Museum. And, there were lots of displays, and it took several hours to go through the museum. And most of the displays were really a celebration of noise. The rumble and the distinctive sound and the growl and, just how manly and masculine it is, to be on the road with a very loud motorcycle.
Ken Schmidt, a former HD executive, once described the sound of his product as the voice of God. and during a speech at a business conference, he said, "Noise is good. Noise is the foundation of your business." Didn't Harley-Davidson attempt to trademark the noise from
yes, they did.
its
they
V-twin motorcycle engines?
Absolutely, they did.
But the voice of God, that's kind of suggesting that what they're doing is something that's good here.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because there are many references in the Bible to the importance of silence and solitude. And also, indeed, when someone dies, when we went to pay them tribute, what do? We have a moment of silence, not a moment of thundering motorcycles.
On RevZilla.tv, which is a series of videos on the RevZilla.com website, there's a video about Vance and Hines. You said they were a manufacturer of aftermarket exhaust systems for Harleys and other brands. The message of the video is clear. These mufflers are all about making excessive noise. What is the decibel level of these exhaust systems?
Oh, they can get up to 80 or 90 easily. And oftentimes motorcyclists claim that they're making all this noise in the name of safety, and they've got an old canard that they repeat continually, loud pipes save lives. That's their excuse for breaking the law.
So why aren't cars noisy? Cars have horns. Can't motorcycles simply have horns?
Exactly. Or another thing is, if motorcyclists are so concerned with their own safety, why don't they wear helmets? And only 19 states in the District of Columbia require motorcycle helmets. And motorcyclists could also, wear protective clothing like, an orange suit, so you can be, seen more easily. And oftentimes motorcyclists drive very recklessly and dangerously.
Weaving in and out.
Exactly. And the other problem with the loud pipe save lives misstatement is that in the 1980s there was a research study, the Hurt study, and the researcher, who is a professor of engineering, he found that 97% of motorcycle crashes were head-on collisions. So if that's the case, the car coming from the opposite direction obviously cannot hear the loud pipes until they pass the motorcyclist. So it's irrelevant to safety.
Well, a car horn is directional, isn't it? Whereas a motorcycle growl seems to come from out of nowhere.
Well, right, and the growl.
You can tell where a car is by the sound of the horn. It's behind you. It's in front of you. But that's harder it's harder to discern when there's a motorcycle.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, the argument of safety is just a subterfuge. It's just an excuse for their desire to make lots of noise.
Can pedestrians suffer health consequences when motorcycles with these Vance and Hines mufflers pass them by?
Oh, absolutely. As you noted at the outset of the show, that noise is not just a nuisance. It is physically dangerous, and there have been numerous studies showing that noise causes stress and chronic fatigue, even contributing to heart disease, certainly hearing loss, sleep deprivation, higher blood pressure. There was even a famous study in New York in the 1970s about noise and educational achievement. One portion of the elementary school was next to a railroad track, and the other was not. And the researcher found, not surprisingly, that the students who were on the quieter side of the school did much better in school.
Do motorcycle dealers make any attempts to educate their customers, the ones who want loud exhaust systems, about
absolutely.
the problems that they're going to create?
No, I don't believe so.
Do they try to discourage them at all?
No, I don't think so. That would be contrary to their economic interests. And actually, I've had a couple of members of my group pose as motorcycle noise enthusiasts and contact the dealers, both on the phone and in person, asking about how can I go about making my motorcycle as noisy as possible. And in every case, the motorcycle dealer was happy to comply.
Well, since they can be, people can suffer health consequences when the motorcycles are going by them, how is it even legal to sell something like Street Cannon or Screaming Eagle?
Well, again, as I mentioned before, the manufacturers put this label on the box for off-course use only, and that legally gets them off the hook.
Well, wouldn't a highway patrol car stop them if they're on the highway?
They could if they so if they desire to do so. Noise Free America, we have recently published a book called Guide to Modified Exhaust Systems, and the subtitle is a reference to law enforcement officers and motor vehicle inspectors. And there are 83 photographs in the book of illegal aftermarket motorcycle equipment, and our goal is to get as many police departments and sheriff departments and other law enforcement agencies to purchase the book for their troops, for their officers, so they'll be better informed on the illegal equipment out there. And the book is reviewed, or the material is very comprehensively covered on a website, motorcyclenoise.org.
Doesn't the noise also damage the hearing and I guess even the psyches of the people who are riding the bikes? Oh,
absolutely. Some of them, have admitted that, they have hearing loss, but they still love it. It's worth it. They enjoy it. They just love being around the noise.
I've noticed while driving that if a group of motorcyclists with loud mufflers approach, it can be quite disorienting. It's really difficult to know where they are.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of intentional, because I think part of the purpose of motorcyclists with loud pipes is they want to dominate, they want to intimidate, they want to make their presence known. Really, noise is a form of power. It's a way to inflict your desire on other people and to establish control and dominance.
Have any studies been done to determine who's at fault in motorcycle accidents?
That one I don't know that I can answer that. I can say that there are a lot of, There are a lot of motorcycle accidents, and in 2016 there were almost 5,000 deaths to motorcyclists in accidents. And another important figure is the fact that the federal government found that for 1 mile driven, that motorcyclists are 12 times more likely to get into an accident.
I'm speaking...
So 29 times more likely.
Wow.
The federal government estimates that per mile traveled in 2015, the number of deaths on motorcycles was nearly 29 times the number in cars. In other words, you have a 29 times more likely chance to be killed if you are driving a motorcycle than driving a car.
So this is not just about noise.
No.
Motorcycles present all kinds of problems.
Exactly.
I'm speaking with Dr. Ted Rueter, director of Noise Free America, which is a national citizens group opposed to noise pollution. Are motorcycles the worst offenders?
In terms of noise, well, I would say so, but there's certainly plenty of other strong candidates. There are loud car stereos, there are leaf blowers, there are car alarms, there's car traffic in general. There is car honking. There's car honking tied to keyless entry systems. There's dog barking. There's PA announcements in stores, music in stores. We are really just bombarded by noise every day.
According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, alcohol use, of course, is a major factor in motorcycle crashes. Aren't alcohol-impaired motorcycle riders also less likely to use helmets, as you mentioned earlier?
Oh, absolutely. I think it really all ties together that, Harley especially tries to market itself as, bad boy. That even if you're, getting middle age and beyond, and you've got gray hair, that you can still be cool. You can still be a rebel. You put on your leather jacket and get on your Harley, and you can make some noise. You can cause some trouble. You can be a bad boy, and you can try to get back to your youthful ideal.
According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, 26% of fatally injured motorcyclists in 2016 had a blood alcohol concentration at above 0.8%.
Wow.
In single vehicle crashes, 37% had similar blood alcohol concentration.
Well, I think you make a great point, and relatedly would be the issue of drugs. The biggest motorcycle rally every year is in Sturgis, South Dakota. And interestingly enough, it's occurring right now. The dates for this year are August 3rd through August 12th. And I've seen a number of reports from the local media there that there have been many drug arrests. And so drugs, alcohol, illegally loud bikes, noise, they seem to all go together.
In 2016, 27% of all fatally injured motorcyclists were operating without a valid driver's license.
Oh, wow.
That, according to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. That, I guess, fits in with the whole bad boy thing.
Exactly. Yeah, social rejectionism. That we are going to do everything we can to say, we don't want to comply with social norms.
We're talking about males. Women also sometimes ride motorcycles. Are they better about all of this?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's certainly a lot more, male motorcycle drivers than women, but the women are, call themselves biker babes. And I think one of the myths of promoted by the motorcycle industry is that if you drive a motorcycle, especially a loud motorcycle, you will have a much better a chance of getting a girl. I don't think that's especially true, and of course the issue would be, what type of girl you would get by being out there with your very loud motorcycle. But there are some women that are attracted to this lifestyle as well.
We see a lot of older riders on the road. Are they more prone to accidents?
Yes, they are. They absolutely are. That just looking for the majority of motorcycle fatalities occur for those in the 45 to 65 age demographic. And that is from the Highway Loss Data Institute of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety.
And a Brown University study cited numerous reasons why older riders have more accidents, including declines in vision and reaction time, larger size bikes that many older riders favor, which tend to roll over more often, and the obviously increased fragility of many older people.
Right, and similarly, the same Insurance Institute for Highway Safety reports that 1 in 5 motorcycle owners say they've been involved in 3 or more crashes. So they're either not getting the message and not modifying their behavior, or they're just getting older and older and staying on the road and suffering with all the cognitive losses that go with increased age.
And that same Insurance Institute of Highway Safety reports that in 2016, 40% of motorcyclist deaths occurred in single vehicle crashes. So that means they're crashing on their own, not crashing into something.
Oh, okay. And that could certainly, indicate the presence of ice or snow, or the presence of darkness, or the presence of alcohol.
Because more of the accidents are obviously taking place at night.
Right.
The Insurance Institute says that the engine size of motorcycles involved in fatal accidents has gone up dramatically. So the bigger the engine, the more dangerous it is to the driver?
Oh, absolutely. It certainly makes sense that it's more difficult to control.
90% of motorcyclists killed in 2016 had larger engines. Are they more difficult to control, these big bikes?
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense.
Loud pipes are in the rear of the motorcycles, yet according to the National Highway Transportation Administration, in 2 vehicle crashes, 74% of the motorcycles involved in traffic crashes were hit in the front. Only 6% were struck in the rear.
Right. Which, again, as I say, is the primary reason why their argument that, quote-unquote, loud pipes save lives is simply inapplicable. Because, for a head-on crash, the car that you're crashing into could not hear your loud pipes because the loud pipes travel behind the motorcycle.
So the other people who are hearing you are the people who are driving behind you, and they're less likely to hit you.
Exactly.
According to the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, speeding is also a major factor in motorcycle fatalities, no surprise. I have a rule of the highway. This doesn't just apply to motorcycles. No matter how fast you're driving, there's somebody who's going to pass you.
Right. And it does not make you any less manly to allow someone to pass you. It's no comment on your masculinity.
So we're talking about loud pipes, but is it fair to argue that sober driving, controllable motorcycles, and following traffic laws will save lives, or more lives than loud pipes?
Absolutely. I want to emphasize, too, that I've got nothing against, and anti-noise people in general have nothing against motorcycles in general. We're against loud motorcycles, and then we're also, of course, against the unsafe driving by motorcyclists. But as we've talked about before, when motorcycles come off the assembly line, they are quiet. I have nothing against quiet motorcycles that are driven responsibly.
I couldn't find any statistics concerning the correlation between loud pipes and crashes, but is it likely that a driver who's willing to break one law, drive a motorcycle with an illegal exhaust system, is also likely to break other laws, like driving drunk or speeding?
Absolutely. And that's one reason why I wish that police departments would take noise more seriously, because it's not only with loud motorcyclists, but also the drivers of loud car stereos. To me, they're simply advertising the fact that they are not interested in obeying the law. And I've actually
It's illegal to crank up your car stereo?
Beyond a certain decibel level, yes.
I thought it was just annoying for the person standing on the corner.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, in contrast to motorcycles, there's no federal regulation or decibel limit regarding loud car stereos, but there are limits at the local level in virtually every municipality, and it's usually around 80 or 82 decibels or so. And Yeah, and the point I was going to make is that I've done a number of police ride-alongs with police officers in Elkhart, Indiana, which does have a very strong noise ordinance, both at the city level and the county level, and they take it seriously. And the officers I've talked to say that they often stop people for loud music and or for loud motorcycles, and they find drugs, they find guns, they find people who have outstanding warrants for their arrest.
It seems to me that the rationale for having a loud car stereo or a loud muffler is telling the world, I'm here.
Right, exactly. It's the fear of not being noticed, and it's the fear of not having any power, and it's perhaps responding to your social status or responding to the fact you don't have much power. You want to make your presence known.
I mentioned earlier that people in smaller towns are most aware of this, but are we more likely to find loud motorcycles in rural areas, or are they just as much a problem in big urban centers?
Well, certainly they're probably more prevalent in small towns and in the country areas and in smaller cities. Perhaps New York City or Manhattan perhaps is not going to have as many because Manhattan, you just don't have the ability to get on the open road and experience that great joy of having the wind rumbling through your hair. But there are a number of large cities that have taken action against loud motorcycles, and that clearly indicates that they're dealing with a perceived problem, a real problem, and most notably the police departments in Denver and Boston and Seattle are cracking down on loud motorcycle noise. And I'm very pleased to report that the Sheriff's Department in Kings County, Washington, which is basically Seattle, they have purchased many copies of our guide to illegally modified exhaust systems, and shared them with their officers, and they are placing a priority on this issue. And actually, the motorcyclists as well are very upset about what's going on in Boston and Denver, and they encourage their ranks to boycott Boston and Denver to somehow punish them for having these strict ordinances and enforcement against motorcycle noise. I'm sure that the people in Boston and Denver are not too unhappy about that.
There was a time when there were a lot of police officers who were on motorcycles. Has that been declining in recent years? They never had the loud mufflers, but I used to see them on the highways a lot more than I do now.
Right. Actually, there are a number of police departments that do have motorcyclists with loud mufflers. And a few years ago, Oakland, California, they purchased illegal exhaust for all of their motorcyclists.
The police department did?
The police department did that. The police department. And, their justification was, one of our officers had an accident, motorcycles are dangerous, and so we need to protect the health and safety of our officers since we're getting loud pipes. It's unbelievable. Police department, knowingly, intentionally breaking the law on an institutional level.
Well, in an odd way, it's kind of like turning on the siren, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
Do they have siren? I don't even remember if cops on motorcycles have sirens.
I don't know.
And flashing lights.
I don't think so.
Now, a lot of people assume that noise is merely a nuisance and that there's really no such thing as noise pollution. But can noise be harmful to our health? Isn't there sufficient scientific evidence that noise exposure can induce hearing impairment, hypertension, ischemic heart disease,
absolutely,
sleep disturbance,
right, high blood pressure, aggressive behavior, chronic fatigue, stress. There are entire academic journals devoted to the health effects of noise. There are lots of books written on the health effects of noise, and then federal studies on the health effects of noise. It's really not in dispute. It's not an open question. We know that noise is very harmful.
And especially to children, I would assume.
Oh, absolutely, and also to dogs and other pets and animals, and to ocean mammals. For example, we all love the 4th of July, and we all love fireworks, but I think it's not commonly recognized that dogs hate fireworks. Dogs feel intense pain because of fireworks and other noise. And, children, as you mentioned, are very susceptible to damage from noise and intense physical pain and hearing loss.
And they have learning problems in some cases.
Absolutely. And we have a problem in this country with noisy classrooms, and there have been studies demonstrating that noisy classrooms are less effective educationally. And we've got a significant problem with hearing loss among preteens, going all the way through the teenage years. I've seen one study that I think 1/3 of America's youth between the age of 6 and 19 have experienced hearing loss.
What about unborn babies? In 1997, the Committee on Environmental Health of the American Academy of Pediatrics stated that excessive noise exposure in utero may result in high-frequency hearing loss in newborns.
Absolutely, and pregnant mothers should go out of their way to keep their unborn babies protected, and that includes not exposing them or trying not to expose them to sustained, very loud noise.
Do we know how many people in the United States suffer hearing loss due to noise pollution?
About 50 million Americans suffer from hearing loss, and about 10 million suffer from tinnitus, which is continual piercing sounds that are very debilitating. Of course, not all of that is a result of noise pollution. Some of it is due to genetic factors, but it is a significant problem.
I'm listening to this through headphones. I'm afraid maybe I'm going to suffer from a little
hearing damage there, Leonard?
I'm worried about it. I'm speaking with Dr. Ted Rueter, director of Noise Free America. In the Harley-Davidson forums on the official Harley-Davidson website, hearing loss and tinnitus are widely talked about. Is there general awareness among the riders that they may be harming themselves with their own noise?
Yeah, I would say so, but the younger ones don't care, generally speaking. And the older ones, I guess in this case, age and experience does bring greater wisdom. A lot of the older ones are expressing regret, oh my goodness, what have I done? And of course, what they come to realize is that hearing loss is irreversible and that there is no cure for tinnitus.
Isn't noise sometimes used as a weapon by law enforcement and the military? For example, in 1989, 1990, the United States military used constant hard rock music to blast Manuel Noriega out of his sanctuary.
Right. And there are also reports that we have done the same thing in Afghanistan with POWs. And
what, to kind of torture them?
Absolutely. And also, we talked about the Oakland Police Department a minute ago. Many police departments have purchased products called the Rumbler and the Howler, and these are products that are designed to make incredible noise. They're kind of add-ons to your car, and again, the idea is to intimidate and to control, to dominate, and to force someone to give up.
I remember years ago there were commercials where somebody would say, "Get a muffler."
Right.
That's all changed. I understand also the United States military is developing acoustic weapons.
Oh, absolutely. And the Israeli army is doing the same thing, and they're probably, just as advanced or more advanced than the U.S. Army is on this topic.
And the Missouri Department of Transportation recently introduced a long-range acoustical device.
Right.
What's that?
It is a way to communicate noise. It is a way to control and establish dominance. It is a way
crowd control?
to debilitate someone who is trying to escape. But
they also are using it for crowd control?
Right, exactly.
153 decibels. Now
that is almost lethal. I mean, you were talking before about the health effects of noise, and we talked about all the different, consequences. Well, one thing we didn't mention, and of course this is rare but extreme, but it is possible, noise can literally kill. Noise can kill you if it gets too loud, too extreme, too intense.
there's also a broken eardrums theory. What is that?
Well, I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with the concept of the broken windows theory, which was developed by sociologists around the 1970s. And the broken windows theory is that if there are broken windows, if there are vacant lots, if there are unmowed lawns in a neighborhood, that it indicates that the bad guys are in control, and things tend to go from bad to worse. And the police give up on the neighborhood, and the good people move out, and the bad guys move in. And so the broken windows theory is an argument for enforcing so-called petty offenses like littering, like jaywalking, like not painting your house, not mowing your lawn. The broken eardrums theory, which I developed, is the idea, an analogous idea, that loud noise in a neighborhood is an indication that the bad guys have taken control, that they control the streets with their loud exhaust, their loud motorcycles, their loud car stereos. It decreases property values. It makes law-abiding people upset, wants them to move out, forces them to move out, and the neighborhood deteriorates and goes into decline and greater crime and disorder.
What impact does that anti-noise program that you mentioned earlier in Elkhart, Indiana, had? Has it improved the economy of the community?
Yes, and let me. I've spent quite a few days, over different periods of time in Elkhart, and Bradley Veit, who is one of our members, he was really he's a local real estate agent, an art dealer, and he was behind the program. He suffers from tinnitus and hyperacusis, and so he clearly had a great personal interest in trying to reduce noise in Elkhart. And so the Elkhart Noise Program, first of all, they have very stiff fines. The first offense is $250. Number 2 is $500. Number 3 is $1,500. And number 4 is $2,500. And I talked to one police officer in Elkhart who told me that one year, one individual had $19,000 in fines each time for a loud car stereo offense. And also, they use the money. They've used the money for public service campaigns, for billboards around the town, for signs around the town, and also for a police officer who is devoted exclusively to noise enforcement. And what this officer does, both the one now and the one who has been there in the past, that they'd be in an unmarked car, and they would be at strategic locations around town where, noise offenses were more likely, and, they would issue fines. And everyone I talked to in Elkhart says that things have quieted down considerably. In its heyday, the town would raise about $200,000 a year in noise fines, and that has decreased significantly lately, but the people in Elkhart tell me that's a good thing because it shows the program is working, and that the fines and the police are a deterrent to loud car stereos and loud motorcycles.
And it's a self-funding program.
Right. I've also done police ride-alongs with a county sheriff. And, he was very enthusiastic about noise enforcement. He told me that years ago he would work the midnight shift and he'd try to sleep at night and he couldn't. He'd try to sleep during the day and he couldn't because of all the noise. And so he is out to get these people. He's out to, control the noise in Elkhart. And so he will often position himself at a busy intersection. He'll hold out his decibel meter, and if someone drives by more than 82 decibels, he will track them down and give them a citation. And I was with him once, and he gave 7 citations in a 90-minute period, each carrying at least a $250 fine.
Well, when you read community blogs, it becomes clear that many citizens blame the police because they're not doing anything to combat the noise. Is it fair to blame the police?
Yeah, I'd say I would say yes. Unfortunately, most police departments do not take this seriously. Oftentimes, people have written us and called us and said they can't get their police chief to do anything. They can't get their area captains to do anything. And unfortunately, I think we must conclude that some, if not many, police officers kind of enjoy making noise. That, think about the type of person who's attracted to being a police officer. They want action. They want excitement. And so to that sort of personality, having their own loud motorcycle would be kind of consistent.
The motor vehicle exhaust noise and muffler laws of practically all 50 states have one key phrase in common: excessive or unusual noise. Well, how can the police even determine when that is the case? Is there some kind of standard they live by, or is it one cop thinks this is too loud, another cop thinks, no, that's not so bad, but that other noise is too loud?
Well, a very common standard is the plainly audible standard at 50 feet. In other words, if you're 50 feet from the source of the noise and you can plainly hear it at 50 feet, then it is reasonable to conclude that it is excessive.
Does modifying the muffler affect a motorcycle's emissions?
Yes, it does. It does. It makes the air quality, the air pollution emissions control system much less effective.
Because they take off the catalytic converter?
Right. And that reminds me of something. In 2013, a fellow member of Noise Free America and I went to Washington, D.C., and we managed to get 2 hours with three individuals at the EPA. The one who works directly on noise pollution, and then two people who are kind of tangentially involved in noise pollution. And they told us that the only way they were going to do anything about noise pollution, especially related to aftermarket motorcycle equipment, is if there was a tie-in to air pollution. So in other words, they're mainly concerned about air pollution, and if the air pollution issue has a tangential relationship to noise pollution, I guess we'll consider the noise issue then and only then.
When the catalytic converter has been removed, it emits up to 10 times the amount of smog-forming pollutants.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that would seem to me to be a good reason for us to clamp down on it, on what we've been discussing, as much as the noise.
Right, and we're mainly here talking about motorcycles and to some extent loud car stereos, but I'm also reminded of noisy lawn care equipment. Gas-powered lawn care equipment, lawnmowers and leaf blowers. I've seen one study estimating 5 to 10% of the noxious fumes emitted in this country are from gas-powered lawn equipment.
Now, why is that the case? In the case of a leaf blower, for example, you can get a battery-powered leaf blower. They just recharge themselves, and they don't make anywhere near the same amount of noise. They're not any more expensive. Do you think that the appeal of the gas-powered leaf blower is the noise?
Yeah, I think so.
All your neighbors know that you're blowing around leaves?
Again, it's the manly, masculine thing. Unfortunately, I would disagree that the battery-powered are the same cost. They're currently a little bit more expensive than gas-powered. And so, certainly the industry is trying to work on reducing the price. There are also a number of governments in California, especially air quality districts, that sponsor leaf blower exchanges. In other words, someone can bring in their noisy, loud, gas-producing or polluting gas-powered leaf blower, and in exchange get a much quieter battery-operated leaf blower.
I'm speaking with Dr. Ted Rueter, Director of Noise Free America. This is WBAI in New York, 99.5 FM. What do the motorcycle associations, such as the American Motorcycle Association or the Motorcycle Riders Foundation, say about excessively loud motorcycles?
Well, those two organizations say very different things. The American Motorcycle Association tries to...
Which ironically comes out to the AMA.
Right. Right, exactly. The American Motorcycle Association tries to present a veneer of respectability and, concern and responsible citizenship. We're trying, and, we don't want people riding their motorcycles very loudly. The Motorcycle Riders Foundation, in contrast, they are aggressively pro-noise. They do not want any restrictions. They go with the canard of loud pipes save lives, and they've got lobbyists all over the place trying to beat back in state legislatures and in Congress and city councils, any restrictions on motorcycle noise. No, they are like gun owners. They don't want any restriction on their so-called rights.
There is also a loud pipes risk rights from the AMA. And in that statement, they said legislation that focuses on decibel levels is ineffective and unenforceable and doesn't focus on the real culprit, illegal exhaust systems. They wrote, if legislators started by requiring exhaust systems to bear the same markings found on stock pipes that show they meet EPA sound level requirements, as well as a measured noise standard, it would be easier for police to enforce. It would also give aftermarket exhaust manufacturers reason to start creating legal systems. We believe, they write, that this would be the most effective tactic.
Well,
should we be asking for an EPA stamp on mufflers?
They were supposed to be. The 1972 Noise Control Act empowered the EPA to issue regulations on motorcycle noise. And in 1983 they did 40 CFR 205. And this regulation requires that there be an EPA stamp on your motorcycle showing that it meets EPA regulations. But as we've talked about, it's not enforced. And also, I chuckle a little bit when you quote the American Motorcycle Association, criticizing the decibel approach for being ineffective. Well, I think the reason they're against it is it would be so easy to do, and they're opposed to any enforcement mechanism which would be easy to do.
People often use the terms Harley and loud motorcycles interchangeably. Is that unfair? Was that fair?
No. I mean, Harley has certainly got the biggest sector of the American market. I think they're about 38% of the American market, but there are many other manufacturers. I think what's different about Harley is that they probably do a better job, if better is the right word, in marketing noise and promoting their organization, their company. And of course, there are lots of local riders groups called HOGs, Harley Owners Groups, HOG. And as like I mentioned, there's the Harley Davidson Museum in Milwaukee. So I think that we've kind of equated Harley with motorcycles, and but there's certainly other manufacturers just not as prominent and not working as hard in a public relations sense.
Harley has also been caught up in the tariff wars with the EU.
Right.
Are we seeing similar situations in Europe with motorcycle riders?
Well, what's interesting is that after Trump unilaterally imposed these tariffs, Harley, announced that they were going to be moving some of their manufacturing facilities to Europe, and Trump responds, "How can they do this? I've been so good to Harley." What has Trump done that's been so good to Harley besides, accepting the support of lots of Harley owners? I remember at the inauguration a year and a half ago, there was a group called Bikers for Trump, and they all congregated in Virginia, thousands of them, and they all rode their illegally modified motorcycles, into Washington, and they said they were going to be there to, offer protection to the new president and to, make sure there was no civil disorder. I think it's, kind of ironic that a group in mass would promise to provide protection to the president while violating the law themselves.
Maybe that explains those caps, "Make America Loud Again."
Right. I like to make America quiet again.
You mentioned that Noise-Free America has written a reference guide for law enforcement and inspectors to help police officers identify illegal exhaust systems. How many police departments have ordered them?
Not too many. not too many. We keep working, we keep trying, and we send notices to police magazines. We send notices to police departments. I have met individually with police chiefs and captains, but it's a hard sell.
So is this a losing battle, despite all of the bad things we have pointed out about these loud mufflers and all the other things that motorcycle riders, loud motorcycle riders, cause?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I've been at this for 17 years. Don't have any plans on giving up. It's something I believe in intensely, and of course, everyone who is part of the organization and part of the cause and part of the mission feels the same way. I think there are grounds for optimism. One thing regarding motorcycles is that Harley Davidson is starting to manufacture electric motorcycles, and that would certainly
at the same price.
Well, not at the moment, but again, just as with leaf blowers and lawnmowers, they're working on bringing the price down. And also, like we talked about, if we could have more people buying and using electric lawnmowers, and I'm not endorsing electric leaf blowers. I'd much prefer that people use a rake and a broom. But if you must use a leaf blower, I'd much rather have people use an electric leaf blower. And there are, I think that what's happened, I often analogize, and a lot of people, have made this point, that the anti-smoking movement and the anti-noise movement have a lot in common. Or we hope they have a lot in common. Because 40 years ago, 50 years ago, wouldn't everyone have thought that it was a lost cause to try to reduce the amount of smoking in this country, especially in public? Well, now, smoking is basically banned in public everywhere. And I mean, I can remember as a kid being on Greyhound buses, and people in the back of the bus were allowed to smoke. And I can remember going to restaurants and there being a smoking section and a non-smoking section. Well, finally, all the anti-smoking activists got the word out. They convinced everyone that secondhand smoke is very physically dangerous. And so I'm optimistic that we can continue to get the word out and persuade people that that noise is the new secondhand smoke, and that noise is really the major environmental issue of the 21st century.
But you, as you pointed out, just legislating these things doesn't seem to have worked.
Well, right, but we need stronger legislation. I would certainly like to see every city and community adopt the sort of program, the sort of anti-noise ordinance that Elkhart, Indiana has. I would certainly like to see more police departments and state highway patrols, being educated on this issue and becoming more knowledgeable about it. I would certainly like to see Congress reinstitute the Federal Noise Pollution Control Office. I'd like to see more public knowledge, change in public opinion, and change in products. I'd like to see more manufacturers, working on reducing noise levels. But even restaurant reviews sometimes now include noise levels because people want to be able to go eat in peace and not be bombarded by the loud music in the restaurant.
It's seen as a generational thing, isn't it? Restaurants started putting more loud music in when they thought that would appeal to younger people.
Right. Absolutely. And I was
but has that worked?
It does work to some extent. It really it has an impact on what people buy and what people drink. Actually, there have been studies showing that if people go to restaurants that have loud music, they tend to order less healthy food and they tend to order more alcohol.
Dr. Ted Rueter, thank you. Reuter.
Rue.
UE. Ter. Director. I misspelled it. I'm sorry.
Okay. You pronounced it right, so that's good.
Director of Noise Free America. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you. I enjoyed it greatly.
And that brings us to the end of our show. My great thanks to Dr. Ted Rueter, spelled correctly this time, Director of Noise Free America, whose website is motorcyclenoise.org, to Susie Stultz, who produced the segment, to Charlie Morrow, who composed our theme music, to Reggie Johnson, who is at the audio controls, and to my assistant producer, Jesse Lent, who makes things run smoothly. That does it for this week's show. Lopate at Large comes to you on Saturdays at 4 and Tuesdays at noon. You can subscribe to Leonard Lopate at Large podcast on iTunes and by clicking on Robin Hood Radio's archive program site, which is robinhoodradio.com. You can also check out Leonard Lopate at Large Facebook page. We hope to see you next week.